Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics from the state capitol in Jeff City. We are here with the man of the hour, the Senate Appropriations Chairman, Lincoln Hough. Got a budget ready to go next week?
I think we got a budget getting really close.
Got it.
You know, the fun thing about this is, the governor spends 6-8 months maybe drafting a budget. The House spends 3-ish months. And then we get it and we've got a couple of weeks, right? Now, we've been working, obviously, the committee's been working this entire session. That's, the constitutional duty of this legislature is to pass a balanced budget. We're going to do that. We're going to make some, I think, key investments in infrastructure, workforce development, education. Sure.
Guy down the hall here came up with an idea to just do the interchanges on I-70. I think most folks liked it. I've heard rumors. I saw like 3 guys walking with armfuls of papers.
Right.
I've heard it may look like you're going to build the whole damn thing.
So I wouldn't say it's me, but I think the committee and I think the Senate, the members that I've talked to thus far, Governor Parson rolled out with his State of the State almost a $900 million investment in I-70. 3 big projects, center of the state in Columbia, St. Louis, and Kansas City. And it's all in, it's about a $3 billion project, $2.8 billion. But listen, the governor did, in my opinion, a masterful job working through the COVID pandemic. We did see a huge influx of federal dollars last year, of which we still have considerable holdover this year. This is a good time, Scott, to make that kind of investment. And so I think what you're going to see next week is a package put together in the Senate Appropriations Committee to do the whole project. 3 lanes, both directions, rebuild it. It's one of the oldest interstates in the country. I think the Eisenhower administration, oddly enough, started building it. So
it really is something, though. We're Southern Missouri guys, but
Yeah.
you cannot deny that if you're going west from Columbia, you're stacked in traffic.
Correct.
It truly has more traffic than it can handle. And I heard the governor say he wanted to do something with this money that would be a lasting thing where Missourians will be able to say, you know what, we're going to do the small things, but there should be some big thing. Is there anything bigger the state could do than redo the main artery of the state?
Boy, I don't know. I think when, and you said it, the main artery of the state, the main artery of the Midwest, quite frankly. Yeah, you're right. I'm a Southern boy. We're down in Springfield. This isn't, I don't drive on I-70 as much as a lot of people, right? I drive on I-44, but the plan will be to, as we're building I-70, do the environmental study work that, oddly enough, in the world of government, right, takes several years to do. So we can simultaneously do the environmental work on I-44 such that if we're in the position that we're in now in a few years, we can make investments in I-44 as well.
Let's talk about something else in the budget. I've read in some maybe more liberal papers the House wanted to cut out libraries.
Oh.
I've never truly thought there was totally point in a library, but regardless, you're going to put library money back in.
I think we're going to put, my intention would be with the involvement, obviously, of our 13 other members of the Senate Appropriations Committee. We almost have a quorum of the Senate on the committee, that we're going to put that $4.5 million back in. It's
not a lot of money, right?
It's not a lot of money, and I think, honestly, we're more rural guys. Libraries are more than books on shelves, okay? They're access points for people who are applying for jobs who maybe don't have the best internet out at their, their house down the gravel road and 2 clicks off the beaten path. Libraries they're just a lot more than books on a shelf. And I think it's a small dollar amount. I think it was kind of a punitive cut that the House made, and I believe we'll be putting it back in.
So lastly, there's been a lot made of a DEI. I didn't know what that meant probably a month ago.
It's the latest scary acronym.
It does sound a little scary. It's what's diversity, equity, inclusion.
Right.
So essentially there was a Department of Natural Resources had a spot to have a coordinator of this.
Right.
It does seem like the kind of thing, like, why would the government be doing that? Why don't you, build I-70?
Sure.
But it seemed like the House put an amendment on there that was pretty big.
So it was, in my opinion, it was a very big deal. The implications for the Appropriations Committee on this side of the building, quite frankly, Scott, are unknown associated with that language. We've had departments reach out. We've had hundreds of businesses around the state reach out. And at the end of the day, what I want to do is I want to take a thoughtful approach to anything we do. Like I said, we spend an inordinate amount of time poring over these budget bills. And I don't think this is the kind of policy that you throw on the floor all of a sudden without really knowing what the implications are for the 6.5 million people that we serve.
Let me just ask you, I've heard a lot of folks that are very supportive of this say this is a statute. This should be a statute. You run through the process.
Yeah.
If this came up for a vote in the Senate, are you totally opposed to supporting something that does kind of what they're trying to do?
Oh, I think on a policy issue, probably that's a discussion we can have. But it's not, the place for this is not slapping it on a $50 billion budget, not knowing what the implications are to the people that we serve.
3 weeks before it's got to be turned in.
Right.
Let's talk about schools. The formula, I've always, anymore, I always think it's interesting. Once you fund the formula, then they say, well, the formula's not good enough. Is the formula funded?
Well, the formula will be fully funded under the calculations that we have now. Now, does the formula need work? I'm not the expert. I think Donnie T's the only one in the building that really knows the ins and outs of this thing. I think he wrote it 20 years ago. But
well, Don thought you would be like the Captain Royal expert. I'd be more like the Kirkland Spice Rum expert of the formula.
Kirkland Spice Rum, that's something you can get off the shelf and probably won't do you any favors after that.
So one thing that I've always found, I rode the Yellow Dog 45 minutes one way back when I was a kid. What about the transportation? What about the Brian Munslinger transportation line in the budget?
Yeah, it's going to be fully funded again. The governor made it a priority this year. We made it a priority last year. I think you're going to see that continuation. And that, again, that's good for everybody. That's good for rural and urban schools. The urban schools, their catch area can be a little tighter then, and those kids don't have to, quite frankly, walk as far. The buses will pick them up. And in rural America, like where you and I are from, I mean, that's a big deal to those rural kids.
So let's talk about schools. Lots. It's funny. 34 senators showed up. I think about half of them thought they were school board members. Lots of folks have education thoughts.
Right.
It's interesting to me. It makes some sense to debate these policies. It sort of, to me, makes a lot of sense to let a school board run a school. But it really feels like it's going to come down to, at the end of the day, there's folks that want in the budget. They want the money. That's what you can argue about all these little Pyrrhic fights and all these Facebook posts or whatever. End of the day, it feels like certain outstate companies want their finger in the budget. This year, do you project that you'll see more tax dollars be shipped out to charter school companies?
I don't think so. I mean, there's investments that we're making in education. We're, both DESE and higher ed. But I don't think, given the track record that some of those charter schools have, quite frankly, about half of them end up closing, a few years after they open up. I don't see that as something that we're probably going to put a lot of force behind.
Let's talk about, you mentioned higher ed.
Yeah.
You're from Springfield. Missouri State feels like it's in a really good spot.
They're in a great spot. They got a lot of good things going down there. Cliff Smart obviously has been doing a great job down there. It's spring, so the Bears are playing baseball now on Hammons Field, and things are good.
And Hammons Field's going to stay in the Cardinals Association, right?
They've got a 15-year deal with the AA Cardinals. We call them the Baby Birds back at home. But I think, the city of Springfield just recently purchased that ball field from the Hammons Trust. And so it's become, Scott, a community icon down there.
Yeah,
and
it's beautiful.
And having the Birds stay in Springfield, I think is great.
There is a little bit of an energy when the team's playing, even that day, when those fans come out and the team is on the field down there. Springfield downtown does have a little bit of an energy, but it's kind of fun.
And the best thing about it is, honestly, some of these guys that get bumped down. I mean, Yachty came down and caught a couple of years ago. We've seen Wainwright throw some balls down in Hammons Field. I mean, it is a good experience, and it's a small enough field that there's not a bad seat in the house.
Well, Jordan Walker, the guy that's got this is on Sunday, so maybe his hitting streak's ended, but 12-game hitting streak. He was hitting balls in Hammons, right? Last summer.
He was.
Have you really seen in your career of watching government? I'm not sure that both Mizzou and Missouri State have ever been in a better position at the same time as both are right now.
Well, and I think that comes down to leadership. Yeah. That comes down to leadership at both institutions. Moon Choi does a phenomenal job with the whole university system.
Isn't that, to me,
the guy's everywhere. He's everywhere. He's like the Kehoe.
He's like the Mike Kehoe,
He's like the Kehoe of higher ed. The guy, if there's two people somewhere, Moon Choi's there too.
It is interesting though. Mizzou has a lot of great things. It's always went on. But let's be honest. When you were leaving the house, Mizzou was in a bad way. And today, new leader.
I think they've turned it around. The leadership's great. The faculty are good. The students are there. They're engaged. The football team is there. It's great.
Before I let you go,
yeah.
Lots of folks talking about running for office in 2024. Mm-hmm. Lots of statewide offices open. Yeah. You've certainly been a person in the top of a lot of lists to consider running. What is it like? I assume you have a budget you're probably going to be thinking about in the next few weeks. Right. Get that budget done. You go for a drive in Greene County. What goes through your mind? How do you weigh out whether you decide to run or not?
Well, it's humbling. We've talked about this before. Even being considered. I'm not a career politician guy, right? I'm a self-made cattleman from Greene County, first-generation farmer. Got two boys at home.
But you've won two competitive races. You have an experience most Republicans don't have. You've had to go win votes from Democrats. You've always been a good fundraiser. Your House district was competitive. You have a breadth of experience right in the budget. And I would say if things like I-70 are built, that's a hell of a resume. How do you weigh out whether you want to keep serving or not?
I look at my kids. I look at William and Sam. And if the time's right.
So so if they want you to run, you got to win 2 of those votes or 1?
I think we're going to need both of them.
Send her up. Good luck with the budget. Thanks for coming and talking this week in Missouri Politics. We will be right back with our opinion maker panel. Bill Hardwick, Pulaski County's own, joins us after this.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
All throughout Missouri, businesses are struggling to find workers. Childcare challenges are a big reason why. Our kids are losing out too. Through high-impact early childhood investments, we can support the workforce of today and better prepare our workforce of tomorrow. Empower families with the resources they need to succeed. Reduce crime and avoid costly interventions, saving taxpayers money. Together, we can make Missouri the best place to work, raise a family, and be a kid.
We all know puppy mills, cruelty, neglect, and pet store puppies are at high risk for disease, even death. We expect our laws to protect dogs, but now an out-of-state company called Petland is trying to change our state law to enable puppy mill cruelty. We all know it'll hurt the dogs we love. Contact your state legislators. Tell them, protect our dogs. Vote no on the cruelty. Vote no on the harmful puppy mill bill.
Data captured by our state-of-the-art monitors helps us pinpoint the timing and location of severe weather more accurately and respond to trouble more quickly. Ameren, Missouri's investment in smart technologies like this is one way we're improving reliability and restoring power faster than ever. Responding to trouble before trouble hits. That's energy at work. Ameren, Missouri.
Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics Opinion Maker Panel Time. We're going to start with David Tyson Smith out of Columbia. Representative, welcome to the show.
Hey, glad to be here.
First time on the show, Aaron Crossley of Independence.
Glad to be here.
I love Independence people because you're not from Kansas City.
That's right.
It's Independence.
We are our very own thing.
At least some of people can be from Kansas City, right?
They're
But
highfalutin,
Independence,
right.
Or Independence, right?
That's correct.
Tricia Byrnes, first time on the show from Wentzville.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Appreciate you making the time. And friend of the show, Bill Hardwick, the Prince of Pulaski County. Welcome back, sir.
Great to be here, Scott.
Representative, if you've read anything about the session this year, you've read about transgender children, whether they're playing in sports or whether they're getting some type of health care that is offensive to some folks.
Sure.
There's a bill that moved through the Senate without a PQ in a relatively orderly fashion, gets delivered to the House, moved through committee this week. Give me what's in it that you know, and then what's your take on it?
You know, one of the issues we have, at least on our side of the aisle, is that a lot of these bills are a distraction. They're sucking up a lot of oxygen, so we can't focus on some of the more important things like roads, gun control, that type of issue. One of the bills, I mean, there's the sports bill that's preventing male individuals, students who are transitioning to females from playing in sports, right? So that's one of the things that's going on. Another bill that we see moving deals with gender affirming care for trans youth. And that's really kind of been the hot topic, both on the floor and in committee.
You're on the committee that heard this. Give me the high points of what this does.
Sure. The gender affirming care bill would prevent any minor from receiving hormone therapy, puberty blockers, and often the puberty blockers are used to delay puberty so that somebody can make those more permanent decisions for themselves after they turn 18. So that's a troubling aspect for me, that it would prevent any minor from doing that. Also would have a lot of penalty provisions for doctors. So if doctors were providing different forms of gender affirming care, they could be penalized pretty severely for following sound medical advice, as recognized by almost the entire medical community.
But I've heard people that, I've watched Republicans, ones that are not bomb throwers, be like, should you be messing with someone's growth. I mean, puberty is a natural part of your development, and maybe that's something folks need to go through.
And I think something to keep in mind is that people don't go through those more intensive treatments until after often years of talking to therapists, getting mental health treatment. And as a mental health provider myself, I'm afraid that bills like this will stop kids from being able to receive even mental health care that would help them through that process and making that determination.
Bill Hardwick, I know you personally. You're a very empathetic person. Seeing those kids, your heart kind of goes out to them, right?
It does. Those families and those young people, and to think about their situation. And I think it's important for us as Republicans, as we're going forward legislation, to think about those points of view and how we are affecting people. I do support Mike Moon's bill. I support Brad Hudson's bill. I think they're important for a couple of reasons. One is the reasons that we kind of alluded to, which is that there's part that changes in a young person cognitively during puberty and adolescence, and we don't really know what the long-term harmful effects are to using these drugs that are not FDA approved for transitioning. So we got to think about that. As somebody's changing and developing, what are we doing to them that's going to affect them when they're 30, 40 years old, behaviorally, mentally, and physically? And so I don't think there's enough discussion about that. And I also think, like Justin Sparks said on the floor, it's important that we affirm principles of the truth, of biological sex, and about who people are, and that we're not trying to change young people's perspective and inculcate them with a perspective that may not be true. So that's important too. But to your point, as we're doing that, and I'm comfortable thinking about those things and having those be the reasons why I support this bill. But as we're doing that, we shouldn't go our way to hurt people or to make life harmful for people. But saying, hey, I think this is true, and I'm concerned about the health of young people as they go forward, whether or not a young woman can have a baby, whether or not a young man, part of their cognitive development is the mental and physiological synergies for testosterone and stuff like that make them into an adult. We got to think about how we're disrupting that, and maybe there are things we don't know that we're doing to those kids too. So I'm comfortable voting yes on those bills, and I'm comfortable. Yeah.
Representative, it does the age-old thing, like you end abortion in Missouri, but there's a bridge to Illinois, right? You would have to think that if you were a parent and you'd signed off on this and wanted to do this, you probably still see it happen, right?
Well, I think you're bringing up a good point about parents, and I watched the testimony. I thought if they're going to come, I'm going to watch it, and I stayed up late into the evening. And we aren't talking about the parents that are going through trauma just as much. Like, it's hard to watch a kid, no matter what the topic is, be in a tough space mentally. And I talked to a child that went through transitioning surgery, and what troubled me the most is what they did to her mom. They were going through a family situation. The mom was being questioned and if she even loved her child, and they threw it out there. Either you're going to have a happy transgender son, or you're going to have a dead daughter. And that's a medical provider, and I don't think they should go after parents like that. So yeah. I think we have to look at what we're doing to parents as well, even to the point that if we take away this care, I don't love that in their heart we're hurting their children. That hurts me to think I'm hurting another parent's child. But I do stand firm that those life-altering decisions need to be delayed until after they're 18.
Now, I mean, I watched Doug Beck in a Senate hearing, and Doug Beck knows his folks, right, in South County. He said, look, I think 80% of my district probably is with the Republican position on all this stuff. It does kind of go counterintuitive, especially if you've not been exposed to these things. But I remember there was a time in my life when I was not exposed to anybody that I knew was gay. And every part about being gay was just weird to me and made me feel uncomfortable. Trans kids, adults, are things that most folks have not been exposed to. Do you think over time, as people are exposed to folks that are trans, their tolerance rises?
I mean, I do. I mean, society always has different ebbs and flows. I think part of the job as a legislator coming into this building, I only bring my own expertise into the building. And so having the public come share their perspective and have professionals coming and sharing their expertise is a really important part of the process. And I think we abdicate our responsibilities as legislators when we have a parade of parents coming through saying, these bills are going to harm my children. We have kids coming in saying, you are trying to hurt me. We have medical professionals coming in saying, this is sound medical advice. at the end of the day, are we going to trust our own opinions and our limited worldviews, our limited expertise, or are we going to listen to what Missourians are telling us? And I feel like we haven't necessarily done that.
Well, how happy will you be when you don't have to listen to another week's worth of testimony on this? I mean,
I would really.
You've earned your money on that committee.
I have, and I would much rather be discussing things that will actually impact Missourians. And we have 4 weeks left, and what have we really accomplished except stoke culture war fires? And I remember during my campaign, all the mailers about me said that I wasn't going to address all of the important things that were going to happen, like inflation, or people being able to put food on their table, people being able to put gas in their cars. We haven't, or being able to access healthcare. What have we really done to address those things that during the campaign seemed to be really important? And I think that they are. But at the end of the day, we're just bullying trans kids.
Representative, you brought up an amendment this week about guns. This issue we were talking earlier. When I first came to the Capitol, not even senior Democrats would touch gun control. It is an issue that's seriously debated now. What was your amendment?
So I filed an amendment banning teenagers from buying semi-automatic weapons. So they can possess the weapons, they can have them, but you can't have this situation like in Uvalde, Texas, where someone's living on their own or they're out by themselves. They're 17. The day they turn 18, they go in and buy a semi-automatic rifle, a box of ammo, and shoot up a school. Same thing in St. Louis. It involved a teenager buying a semi-automatic weapon. I think they should at least wait till they're 20. You can't buy handguns until you're 21. So why are we allowing teenagers to purchase AR-15s and AK-47s and then go wreak havoc on schools? And the interesting thing is, and the irony, Scott, is, on the floor, we hear about protecting children. Well, what about protecting kids who are getting murdered in Missouri, around the country? I mean, in St. Louis, CVPA, a child had her arm blown off. She's screaming in the hallway. The other students couldn't get out because they were locked in. And can you imagine hearing a 15-year-old screaming out there, and then she bled out and died? So why don't we focus on those kids and helping those kids and kids in the state and around the country?
Your successors, Bill Hardwick, really, gun control wasn't a serious thing discussed. There was not even really Democrats most of the time would talk about gun control. Now, it's a debate where I've even watched some suburban races. The Republican gets pretty quiet about gun control.
No, I agree. It hasn't been an issue before, but now it's a serious policy discussion about what we do about violence, whether or not we're going to enact some gun control. And I have tremendous respect for Representative Smith. I think he knows that. I've opposed and thwarted his amendment everywhere he's offered it. And the reason that I did was because, first, I make the argument about an 18, 19-year-old adult who should probably be able to own a firearm if they're an hour from the police in rural Missouri, if they're living alone in the city, to defend themselves. And a semi-automatic weapon is functionally similar. Semi-automatic handgun, rifle, those have been around for over 100 years.
And I'm not opposed to that.
No.
They can own. I'm not opposed to 18-year-old own.
But they can't purchase.
By themselves.
And so I think that if you're 18, 19, you should be able to go buy a rifle if you're an adult. And I think that is not, to me, there's not a connection between that ability and what's actually causing murder. I think that in our society, we're breaking down the way we respect each other, treat each other, about how we deal with life, about our humanity. And those are issues that are causing more violence to erupt and more murder to happen. And until we address those causes, there's going to be continuous violence.
I've watched this group, Moms Demand Action, and I have a buddy of mine who ran for stirrup as a Democrat a couple cycles ago. And he was going to a meeting. He said, "There's 400 people. You wouldn't believe it." And I was like, "Wow, are you in Clayton?" He goes, "No, I'm in St. Charles." It does feel as though, while folks vote Republican, there's some folks that maybe not made it out to Winslow yet, but I would say in that St. Charles area, gun control does not poll like it polled 10 years ago.
No, it doesn't. And I've never been in the military, and so we have people who talk about guns and the expertise of that. And one of the things that I've seen when I've talked to people in education, because that setting in the school is what's so troubling. And it seems to be a lot of bullying is involved. So while I'm letting my colleagues that understand guns and how that plays out, I'm trying to look at stuff like zero tolerance policies, where if a child gets bullied in the schools, they're not allowed to defend themselves, nor does another child. They're not allowed to defend them either. And I think to myself, while you guys debate guns, I'm going to try to make it where somebody can rescue a child, whether it be themselves, another student, or a teacher. I can't imagine the trauma that would be in today's day and age where you can't defend yourself through school.
Probably the biggest news from last week was the budget comes through the House, and Representative Ritchie had an amendment that got added to eliminate DEI, which I wouldn't have known what that was till recently, but diversity, equity, inclusion, right? It kind of felt like if that's a statute, that had a chance. What's your take on the whole situation?
I think I called it in my weekly newsletter a poison pill language. I think no matter where people fall on diversity, equity, inclusion programs, they are an incredibly common business practice. A lot of federal funding is tied to compliance to certain DEI issues. It was brought up on the floor that even Chick-fil-A has a diversity, equity, inclusion program. They have officers, they have a whole department.
Oh, those cows mad.
Right. Those cows are so mad they had to get the DEI program. I think putting that language into the budget, legislating through the budgetary process, is the wrong way to go. It's healthy to debate issues, but no matter where people fall on it, by putting that language in there, we're going to shut down nonprofits that are receiving funding that have to have DEI programs. We're shutting down healthcare facilities, we're shutting down schools, universities, et cetera. And I think it'll shut down our state if it passes as it is now.
Representative Hardwick, it does seem like you legislate the budget every year to a certain extent. This seems like a pretty aggressive one that would have passed the House in a statute form, but
Yeah, and it still may. I don't buy the argument you don't legislate to the budget, because the budget is legislation. It's a bill. It's a political process. Appropriations inherently political. So I think us putting caveats on expenditures is appropriate, at least to some extent. I voted for every single one of Doug Ritchie's amendments. Even toward the end there, where many Republicans fell away, and Doug was like, even if there's a bag of potato chips with DEI, we're not funding it. And I was still like, yeah. And I'll tell you the reason why I did. Because I thought aspirational about what I think society ought to be. And I think society where we don't judge people based on their skin color or treat them based on their skin color, but on their character is a way to go. And I thought that Doug Ritchie's amendment was a step in that direction.
with a minute left, you won the week.
Rasheen Aldridge, he served the House well, gave a farewell speech,
Stole
man of
mine.
honor and integrity, fun to be around, leader. I give it
You
to him.
totally stole mine. I was going to go Regine, but who won the week?
I think, not to suck up too much, but I think Crystal Quaid won the week. We showed that as a caucus, our votes are needed sometimes.
Yes.
And we showed our muster, and I think it's a reminder that we're only 3 seats away from breaking the supermajority. Republicans will have to work with Democrats, and I think a diversity of thought, a diversity of opinion is good. So it was a reminder that that's good.
Who won the week?
Representative Francis. He went down to Southeast Missouri and picked up a chainsaw and helped the people that are suffering down at the bottom of our state.
As we call him back home, he's a good old boy. Who won the week?
Spider-Man himself, Brian Seitz. He presented a bill last night in committee, knocked it out of the park. The Democrat members were flabbergasted. My colleague, she'd be embarrassed if I called her my friend after this show, Ashley Ani, was speechless. And Brian did fantastic.
I mean, if Brian Seitz was there, who would he say won the week?
He would probably say Brian Seitz won the week, yeah.
I'm good. I don't have anything better than Representative David Tyson Smith. I would say Rasheen Aldridge came down here and did a great job. And I'll give you one of the week. The next time Alderman Rasheen Aldridge drives over to Kansas City to see his friends on a 3-lane I-70, it can be a good thing for the state. We'll see you from our studios in Warrensburg next week on This Week in Missouri Politics.
This Week in Missouri Politics is sponsored by the Missouri Automobile Dealers Association, Ameren, Spire, and the United Electric Cooperative.